It's November 6, 1983 in Hawkins, Indiana, a quiet little town. Four best friends, Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, Lucas Sinclair, and Will Byers, are in Mike's basement playing D&D. They're fighting over a monster they call the demogorgon, laughing, yelling until late. When it's over, Will rides his bike home alone through a dark woods near Mirkwood, a spooky road. And suddenly, a tall, skinny figure with no face and long claws steps out. Will ditches his bike and runs home, locking the door, but the thing gets in. He vanishes, and there was no scream, no trace, and his bike was left behind. The next day, Joyce Byers, Will's tired single mom, notices he's not in bed. She checks with his older brother, Jonathan, a shy guy who loves photography, and they start searching. Joyce runs to Sheriff Jim Hopper, a gruff cop who drinks too much and sleeps on his couch. And he thinks Will's just lost because kids wander off sometimes. But Joyce insists that something's wrong. At school, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas wonder where Will is while dodging bullies. Mike's older sister, Nancy, is busy crushing on Steve Harrington, a popular guy with big hair. Her friend, Barb Holland, tags along to a party at Steve's, rolling her eyes at Nancy's new boyfriend. Meanwhile, at a secret government lab called Hawkins National Laboratory, something's freaky going on. Men in white suits are suiting up to check out a swirling, slimy portal in a wall and a gate to somewhere bad. A girl escapes from that national laboratory as well. She's skinny, has a buzz cut, and a tattoo that says 011. She stumbles into Benny's diner, stealing fries and barely speaking. Benny, the big-hearted owner, feeds her, but the lab agents track her down and shoot him dead, and she bolts into the woods. Back in town, Hopper tells the boys to stay out of it, but they grab their bikes and search for Will anyways. They find 11 in the rain, cold and scared. Mike hides her in his basement, giving her a blanket and some of his clothes. She's weird and loves Eggo waffles. Doesn't say much, but when she sees a picture of Will, she points to him and says, "He's gone." The boys figure she knows something. 11 uses Mike's walkie-talkie to pick up Will's voice, faint and scared, and he says he's in the Upside Down, a dark, twisted version of Hawkins with that monster, aka the Demogorgon, running around. Joyce's house starts going nuts. Lights blink like crazy, the phone rings with static, and Will's breathing on the phone. And Joyce swears that Will was trying to talk to her. So she strings up Christmas lights and paints letters on the wall to spell out messages, and Will uses those lights from the Upside Down and tells Joyce, "Right here," and run. Hopper digs into the case, finding Will's body at the morgue, but it's a fake, a dummy from the lab. Hopper starts taking the case a little more serious after that. At Steve's party, Barb sits by the pool, bored, when the Demogorgon yanks her into the Upside Down, leaving blood on the diving board. Nancy's too busy with Steve to notice, but Jonathan's outside, snapping photos, and catches something weird. The boys take 11 to school, dressing her in a blonde wig and a pink dress to blend in at a fake memorial for Will. At a quarry, the bullies corner the boys once again. One pulls out a knife and makes Mike jump off a cliff. And of course, 11 is there to save him, floating him back up. And then she flips a van when lab guys show up in several different cars. Hopper teams up with Joyce and breaks into the lab, finding a portal in a kid's room with drawings from 11's old cell. They talk to a lady named Terry Ives, whose baby was taken by the lab years ago, and it turns out it was 11. She was raised by Dr. Brenner, a creepy scientist she calls Papa. He made her do experiments, like listening to people's thoughts in a water tank, and it messed her up. In a flashback, we see her accidentally open a gate, letting the Demogorgon loose. Nancy and Jonathan hunt the monster, buying guns and bear traps. Hopper and Joyce use a kid's pool to help 11 find Will in the Upside Down, and once they do that, 11 ends up seeing Barb, and she's dead. She also sees Will, and he was hiding in his fort in Castle Byers, barely alive. Hopper and Joyce then go to the Hawkins lab and go through the gate wearing suits to breathe the gross air and find Will stuck in vines. At the school, the Demogorgon busts in, killing lab agents, and 11 pins it down with her powers and says goodbye to Mike with tears in her eyes, and it blows up. She took herself out in the process, or so it seems. A month later, it's Christmas, Will's back, weak but alive. The boys play D&D, and Mike's sad without 11. Nancy picks Steve over Jonathan, Hopper leaves waffles in a box in the woods, hoping 11's okay, and Will goes to the bathroom and coughs up a slug. Something's still wrong. For season 2, it's October 28th, 1984, almost a year later. Hawkins is getting ready for Halloween. The boys, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will, are obsessed with the arcade. They're playing this game called Dragon's Lair and Dig Dug. A new kid named Mad Max beats Dustin's score, and they're dying to know who it is. Will's jumpy, seeing flashes of the upside down, red skies, slimy tunnels, and a huge shadow monster with tentacles. Turns out, it's called the Mind Flayer. He draws it over and over, freaking out Joyce. Hopper's hiding 11 in a cabin in the woods, teaching her rules like stay inside and don't use powers. She's bored, misses Mike, and fights with Hopper about it. Joyce is dating a new person named Bob Newby, a goofy guy from Radio Shack who loves puzzles and tries to win over Will and Jonathan. Nancy's torn up about Barb, blaming herself, and she drags Steve to a Halloween party to get drunk and spill the truth. A new girl, Max Mayfield, shows up at school. She's the arcade champ, a skater with red hair and a tough attitude. Her stepbrother, Billy Hargrove, is a jerk with a mullet who drives a loud Camaro and almost hits the boys with it. Dustin finds a slimy slug thing in his trash can and names it Dart, and keeps it in a tank, and turns out it was not a good idea. It grows fast, eats his cat, and escapes, turning it into a mini demogorgon. 11 uses her powers to spy on Mike, sees him with Max, and gets jealous. She flips Max's skateboard from afar, seeking revenge. She then sneaks out of the cabin, visits her mom Terry, who's unresponsive, and stuck repeating the same words. Breathe, sunflower, 3 to the right, 4 to the left. 11 then digs into her mom's mind and sees she was a lab test subject too, and finds out her real name is actually Jane Ives. Meanwhile, Will's visions get worse. The Mind Flayer takes over his head, making him its spy. He collapses outside, and Joyce and Hopper take him to the lab, where Dr. Owens, a nicer scientist, tries to help. Hopper investigates rotting pumpkin fields and finds tunnels underground, full of upside-down goo. He gets trapped, breathing toxic air, until Joyce and Bob rescue him. Dart's not alone. Demo dogs and a pack of baby demogorgons start popping up. 11 hitchhikes to Chicago, meeting Callie, who is number 8, another lab kid who can make people see fake stuff. Callie's living with punks, hunting lab workers for revenge, and gives 11 a makeover. Black eyeliner and slicked hair. They almost kill a guy, but 11 stops, realizing she belongs in Hawkins. Back home, Bob figures out Will's crazy drawings are actually a map of the tunnels. The demo dogs attack the lab, chewing through the guards. Bob hacks the computers to unlock the doors, but a demo dog catches him in the hallway and rips him apart, and Joyce watches, screaming and gets traumatized. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Max trap Dart in a junkyard, but more demo dogs show up. Steve swings a bat to protect them, until the Hawkins lab makes a noise and distracts the demo dogs. The Mind Flayer is still in Will's mind. They tie him up in a shed, crank the heat up with space heaters, and yell memories at him. Joyce yells about his drawings, Jonathan about his music, and Mike about their D&D games. Will fights back, tapping Morse code to say, close gate. 11 and Hopper head to the lab, where she uses all of her strength to shut the portal. The Mind Flayer leaves Will, and the demo dogs drop dead. A month later, at the Snowball, the kids dress up, Mike dances with 11, Lucas with Max, and Nancy dances with Dustin to cheer him up. In Season 3, it's June 1985. Hawkins is hot and busy. The new Starcourt Mall is the place to be. It has bright lights, shops, and a food court. Steve's stuck scooping ice cream at Scoops Ahoy with Robin Buckley, a sarcastic girl from band who teases him nonstop. Mike and 11 are glued together, kissing all of the time, which drives Hopper crazy, so he tries writing him a no dating speech, but chickens out and yells instead. Dustin's back from science camp, bragging about his girlfriend named Susie nobody's met. He builds a big radio tower and picks up Russian code. Joyce notices magnets falling off her fridge and thinks something's off again. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan work at Hawkins Post, but the old guys there treat Nancy like her coffee girl. Billy Hargrove is a lifeguard at the pool, flexing and flirting all the time, until he crashes his car near an old steel mill. The Mind Flayer, a smoky shadow, takes over his body, making his eyes go black. He kidnaps a lady, locks her in the mill, and her body melts into goo that joins the Mind Flayer's new monster, which is a big, wet pile of flesh with teeth. Hopper and Joyce find a Russian lab under the mall, beat up the guard, and kidnap Alexei, a scientist who only speaks Russian. They drag him to Murray Bauman, a weird conspiracy guy who translates Russian, and he says the Russians are opening the gate with a giant laser. Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Erica, who's Lucas's loud little sister, sneak into the mall's basement after cracking the Russian code. They find boxes of mysterious green goo in a huge elevator that drops them into a base full of soldiers and machines. 11, Max, Mike, and Lucas and Will hang out, but 11 spies on Billy with her powers and gets too close. The Mind Flayer sticks a piece of itself in her leg. She pulls it out, screaming, but she's shaken. Billy grabs more people, lifeguards, neighbors, and turning them into his monster, which grows bigger and nastier. At the 4th of July fair, the gang comes together. Dustin's group escapes the base with cuts and bruises. Meanwhile, Steve and Robin get drugged by Russians, but they laugh it off later. The Mind Flayer's creature crashes the fair, chasing 11's crew into a cabin. They throw fireworks at it while Hopper and Joyce and Murray break break into the base and turn off the laser. Alexei gets shot by a Russian hitman at the fair, and Hopper fights a big guy named Grigory. He tosses him into the machine. It blows up, closing the gate, but Hopper's stuck on the wrong side. Everyone thinks he's gone. The monster dies, and Billy, who broke free to save Eleven, gets stabbed by it and dies in Max's arms. 3 months later, Joyce sells her house, Eleven's powers are gone, and she moves in with the Byers, and they went to California. Max is quiet, missing Billy, and Steve and Robin get jobs at a video store. In Russia, guards feed a prisoner to a demogorgon, but another cell holds Hopper. In season 4, it's March 1986, and the group splits up. In California, Eleven, who now goes by Jane Hopper, starts school with Will and Jonathan. Kids bully her, calling her a freak, and she smashes a girl's face with a skate, landing her in jail for a bit. Joyce gets a doll in the mail from Russia with a note that says Hopper's alive. She calls Murray to help rescue him. In Hawkins, Chrissy Cunningham, a cheerleader, meets Eddie Munson, who's a long-haired D&D player, and she met him to buy drugs. At his trailer later on, her eyes roll back, she floats up, and her bones snap, killed by Vecna, a new monster with burned skin and vines for hands. Eddie runs, scared, and now the town thinks he's a murderer. Max sees Chrissy die and tells Dustin, Steve, and Robin and Lucas, who's now a basketball player, and they find Eddie hiding at a lake house. Then Vecna curses Max with headaches and visions of a clock. She writes goodbye letters, thinking she's next. At a graveyard, Vecna lifts her up, but she escapes by listening to Running Up That Hill on her Walkman, and it pulls her back to reality. In Russia, Hopper's in a prison, working with a guy named Dmitri. Those two fight a demogorgon in a pit for the guards' amusement, using spears and fire. Joyce and Murray fly to Alaska, bribe a pilot, and crash land near the prison. Eleven gets picked up by Dr. Owens, and he takes her to Nevada for the Nina Project, which is a tank to bring back her powers. Brenner's there, alive, forcing her to relive memories. In these memories, she sees Henry Creel, a nice man from her past, or so she thinks. She fought him, blasting him into the Upside Down, where he turned into Vecna, the Mind Flayer's boss. In Hawkins, the gang learns Vecna's tied to the Creel house, where a family died in the 1950s. Nancy and Robin dig up files. Victor Creel, the dad, is alive in a psych ward, and he's saying a demon killed his family, not his son. The plan then splits. Max, Lucas, and Erica go to the Creel house to bait Vecna. Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie enter the Upside Down through a gate in the lake, which was called Watergate, and that's where bats with tails attack. Eddie plays master puppets on a guitar to lure them away, shredding on a trailer roof, but they swarm him later, and he dies bleeding out. Hopper and Joyce escape Russia with Dmitri, blowing up the Demogorgon pit. Eleven, in her tank and piggybacking, fights Vecna with her mind, saving Max as he snaps her arms. Max flatlines but comes back to life, ending up in a coma. Vecna's gates rip Hawkins apart into 4 cracks that spill upside down vines and ash. 2 days later, the crew's back together, helping at the school gym with blankets and food. Max is alive, but broken and in a coma. Will feels Vecna's still out there, and Eleven stares at the smoky sky, ready for the final battle.